Welcome to 88.7 The Pulse. You're listening to The Pulse Out in the Week, and you're joined by Spike. And it's just me in the studio today. Mr. Adam was a little bit under the weather, so he couldn't join me today. But we've got a lot to talk about here. We're talking live in Europe, 1972, Grateful Dead. We're talking a little bit of a live album today. We don't usually do live albums. This is the first of its kind, so I thought that this was the perfect album to start with. The Grateful Dead is not a band that studio recordings seem to do them justice. They've never seemed to have done anything super great in the studio. That's just not where they shine. I've listened to all of their albums from American Beauty to some of their other ones, and they just never seem to be able to capture the true vibe of the Grateful Dead. In that the studio is just they're confined. They're stuck. They're kind of under pressure and stuff, and they never seem to deliver quite the same. This live in Europe, 1972, it just seemed to be the peak of their time. They'd had the late 60s to develop the Grateful Dead, having founded them each other in 1965. So they'd had 7 years to develop their sound. They wrote a lot of music in that time. A lot had happened in that time, and they'd found themselves playing for crowds of thousands of people. And this was, not like any other performance. They'd got themselves in front of thousands and thousands of people, and they just put it on as usual. Now, this performance, or this album, I should say, was recorded over multiple days. There was definitely multiple sessions. Cumberland Blues was on April 8th, Brown Eyed Women, April 14th, Jack Straw, May 3rd, Sugar Magnolia, May 4th. You get the gist of it. It was over a couple days, spanning from April 8th to May 26th. But it was a specific tour that they went on. It was Europe 1972, of course. And, they really were playing like their hits at the time. And they weren't going on tour, of course, playing their hits. These were the hits. This wasn't them refreshing anything. This was at the time. And, the Grateful Dead couldn't have been bigger. I mean, in 1972, that's pretty much when everybody wants to see them. It was post, like they had to workshop a little bit. They had to develop some of their sound. They had to work out some knots in their material. And they did that, I'd say, in the late 60s. And so by the time they got to 71, 72, they were really smooth. Some of these songs are just like my favorites. I'm sure if you know the Grateful Dead at all, you know about all of these songs off here. I mean, we've got hits like China Cat, Sunflower, I Know You Right, Our Brown Eyed Girl, Ramble on Rose, Sugar Magnolia, Mr. Charlie, Truckin', just the greatest hits, really. Now, the personnel for this was slightly different than usual. Now, on the piano, they didn't have Pigpen. This was post Pigpen's career. He unfortunately died of cirrhosis before this concert could have gone down. But they had Keith Godchuk. Now, this, I always say last names pretty badly. Godchuk, I want to say, something like that. But his first name was Keith. Now, this is the guy that was playing piano for the band back when they made their Grateful Dead movie back in 1974. So he stayed around for a little bit. You might know him. He's the redhead, a bit overweight, And he was also dating the Mountain Girl. I'm sure you know the Mountain Girl. She's got that long, luscious hair. She was an additional singer for the band for a couple years. And in my opinion, this is the strongest lineup for the band. I love this lineup, and I gotta say, Pigpen is great, but he didn't do the justice for the piano as much as I think Keith Godchuk did. But Pigpen was still part of it. He was still doing some organ and some vocals, like on Mr. Charlie. He comes in with those vocals, and man, what a strong set of pipes that guy's got. He's got something in there you wouldn't expect from him. You look at him, and he doesn't look like he would be a front man, but he really is. They kind of designated him to be the front man of the show. He was really able to get up there and put it on better than just about anybody. So you know what? I'd like to give you a taste of what I'm talking about here. I was just talking about Pigpen, and I was just talking about Keith Godchuk. So what do you say? Let's get into it. Let's get into one of these good songs with a little bit of vocals from Pigpen. This is Mr. Charlie on 88.7 The Pulse.
I take a little powder, take a little salt, put it in my shotgun, and I go walking out to my juba. Charlie told me so. I won't take your life, won't even take a limb. I just unload my shotgun, take a little skin. Chuba, 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 bullet, bullet, looking high, looking low, gonna scare you up and shoot you. Mr. Charlie told me so. Well, you take a silver dollar, take a silver dime, mix it up together in some alligator wine. And I can feel the drums a voodoo all night long. Mr. Charlie telling me I can't do nothing wrong. Chuba, 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 bully, 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 looking high, looking low, gonna scare you up and shoot you. Mr. Charlie told me so. Well, Mr. Charlie told me, thought you'd like to know, give you a little warning before I let you go. Chuba, 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 bully, 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 looking high, looking low, gonna scare you up and shoot you. Mr. Charlie told me so. Gonna scare you up and shoot you. Mr. Charlie told me, Mr. Charlie told me so.
Excuse us, folks, but we just had a bass drum head break, so we're gonna have to take a minute or two to fix it.
Welcome back to the Pulse Album of the Week. You're joined by Spike. So I just played Mr. Charlie for you. What a song right there. That one just seems to lift me out of my seat. You know, I always feel like grabbing a microphone and just kind of singing along for that one. What an interesting vocal line, you know. He's got such a unique voice. I've never heard this recreated anywhere else. And I just don't know how to describe Pigpen's voice. It's really one of a kind, and it's remarkable. You know, I've always tried to kind of imitate it in a way. It's so big, and it fits this kind of music so perfectly, and I envy that so much. You know, moving forward, we've got some other good songs that we're going to be playing for you soon. This one that I'm going to be playing for you next, China Cat Sunflower, there's a lot to do with this one. You know, back in 1972, for some reason, people would bring their kids to these concerts, and so they're bringing their kids just onto the dance floor, and everybody's dancing, and they got these kids, just like little kids, I'm talking, you know, like 4 or 5 years old, just dancing on the dance floor. And so they're playing this song, China Cat Sunflower, an extended version, of course. You know, that's the Grateful Dead for you, extended jams. And so some guy in the audience, he thought it was just be a great idea to put these kids on stage. And it was. I mean, he put these 2 kids on stage, one little boy and one little girl, and they were just dancing away, really enjoying the music. And I felt like that really encapsulated what the Dead wanted. You know, it's music and it's love. You know, it's good music and it's good love. And you know, that goes all around the world. You know, it's love on many degrees, including family. And to be able to include your children in this, I think is just a full circle moment. And so they're on stage just dancing around. You know, Jerry's kind of playing with them a little bit. So is Phil, and I just thought that was a beautiful moment. That's the kind of band that this is. You could bring the family to it. I mean, of course, you gotta be ready. There's definitely some other crazy things going on at Grateful Dead concerts, but it's a very loving environment, and I think anybody can be a part of that if you want to be a part of the loving environment. Man, there was a lot that went on in Europe in 1972. That was a crazy year. There's some footage behind the scenes of them traveling and stuff to venue back then, and man, they were a wild couple of folks, and also all of them smoked. Like every single one of them was smoking cigarettes and cigars, and I thought, man, it's truly amazing that they all made it out without dying of lung cancer. I thought that would be the thing that would get them all. I'm watching this video of them in the airport and stuff, and they're just smoking like chimneys in this airport. It's like I can only imagine how it smelled in the airport back in the early 1970s. It would have been god awful. I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I would have been running out for a little bit of fresh air. And these poor people's lungs. Jerry Garcia is just puffing and puffing. That guy never doesn't have a cigarette in his mouth in the early 70s. He just keeps going. What a chimney, that guy. Oh, and I want to say Mickey Hart. He's also the exception, the second drummer from the band. He just seems to go nuts. He's a cigarillo man. He always had this dark brown, long cigarillo in his mouth that never seemed to end. I just thought that was fascinating. It's a real throwback. You don't ever see that nowadays. I see very few people smoking cigarettes nowadays. The only people I see smoking cigarettes are usually, rednecks or just underclassmen. Very, very few like classic dudes smoke cigarettes. That's just the facts are there. That you're gonna kill yourself if you smoke all those cigarettes, and so, you just don't see that nowadays. So that's why I'm so shook to have seen it in some of these videos of behind the scenes. But they were having good times. They were all so young. Their skin looked so good. It didn't take long for Jerry and the rest of the band to get old, but especially Jerry. I mean, you look at Jerry Garcia in some of the later years, and he just kind of fell apart. His skin gets so wrinkly, and he gets really big and fat and stuff. And it's just like to see him in this prime condition. They're all skinny. They've all got good skin. They've all got dark hair. It's shocking, man. This is their prime. They were ready to rumble back then, 1972. So much energy and so much charisma. They just never seemed to not have something to say, and it was always interesting. Well, anyways, I've done a lot of talking here. I think I want to put you guys onto this next song. We were talking about China Cat Sunflower, and I think it's about time to hear it. This one is not about China, and it's not about cats. It's actually about none of the above. And this one, I'll shock you. So here is China Cat Sunflower on 88.7 The Pulse. And we're back. You're listening to the Pulse Album of the Week, and you're joined by Spike. We just heard a little China Cat Sunflower. Man, I love that song. I had this band back in early high school called Spike and the Monkeys. I know it's a little silly, a little self promoting too, Spike and the Monkeys, but I swear to God, I didn't pick that name. It was my friend that picked that name. Everybody just seemed to think my name was funny. Spike and the Monkeys? I don't know. I thought that was amusing. But, anyways, um, I used to play a lot of this kind of stuff with them. We weren't the biggest Dead fans. I mean, well, we were the biggest Dead fans, but we weren't the biggest Dead cover band. We did a lot of Fish and stuff like that, but we definitely did a couple Dead tunes, and one of those being China Cat Sunflower. That was one that we figured out, and we always really loved jamming on, because that one seems like you could just ride that one into the ground, the ends of the earth. That one never has to end if you don't want it to. You could just solo and solo over that, and that main groove just, if you hold that strong, you've got something real good there. And that just bring back memories. I loved playing in that band, and that was one song that just seemed like we could just jam on for as long as we wanted to. And sometimes that's what you want to do. You just want to jam. Speaking of jamming, man, what a jam band. This is the jam band. I'm pretty sure they started the word jam band. Uh, I'm a big fan of a jam band kind of thing. Sometimes you just gotta jam and just keep it going. These people are sitting in the crowd, they're tripping and stuff, and what they want to see is they just want to see you playing constantly for hours. They've got to make it out of here. They've got a couple hours in them of just sitting down and losing their minds, and so they just want to hear it for hours and hours. And that's what they managed to deliver to the people. Sometimes it got a little ridiculous. These extended jams were just craziness. It wasn't like there wasn't any meat to it sometimes. It was just kind of nonsense. And I hate to admit it, but it was truly just some nonsense sometimes. They would just go crazy with it. There was just random notes and chaos on stage, chaos in the crowd. The crowd would just start flopping all over the place, literally, when this kind of stuff happened. Some of the people would just fall on the floor or just start waving their hair in all crazy directions. The rest of the song has a bit of a flow to it, and so you kind of know how to dance. Everybody knows you dance on beat and stuff like that. But once you get to these extended jams, it's like what am I supposed to do with my body? Because everybody wants to dance in the Dead crowd, and so they're all just going crazy. You don't know what else to do. And so if you look out into the crowd when they start going to these extended jams, you'll see something nuts. I mean, just craziness. And that's where a lot of people get lost with the Dead. They can't get on board with these extended jams. I don't know why. I've always been a fan for it. There's definitely a time and a place, but I think that the Grateful Dead has a pretty good job about, timing it right. Sometimes you got to hear a bunch of nonsense, It just kind of fills the void, and it captures the time, It's like at the time we needed a little bit of that. I don't know if you've ever watched, David Lynch films or stuff like that. In this psychedelic time, you know, that's kind of part of the psychedelic experience. It's just madness, and they capture that really well, and they put it on paper, or I should say, through the speakers pretty well. They convey their message, and I don't know. I always just thought that that was a needed part of the music. I always thought that we kind of needed to hear that a little bit to understand the rest of it and to appreciate the rest of it as much. In life, there's no good without bad, and I think that just goes for everything. If you don't have a little nonsense and a little craziness in your life, then the good times won't mean as much. And so if you don't have a little bit of extended jams that just seem to run you into the ground, then that once that beat hits again, it won't mean quite as much. And so, it's a science, man. You gotta work with them, man. Understand the science of it. It's they're warming up, they're warming you up to hear this song, to hear the beat drop, if you will. It's a bit more modern terms for a very old band, but it is a bit of a beat drop. The extended jam ends, and then they come back in with the main song, and what a feeling that is. You make it through these extended jams, and then you finally get to that first note of the real song, and it's just like, oh wow, this is beautiful. It all makes sense. All right. Anyways, I've done a lot of talking here. I think you people want to hear some good music. The Grateful Dead just never seems to stop banger after banger, and this one's one of my personal favorites. I love to just sit with an acoustic guitar and sing this one to myself. This is Brown Eyed Girl. Oh my gosh, not Brown Eyed Girl. I've got myself mixed up. I've been listening to some Van Morrison recently, and so that's got me in the mood. Okay, let me try this again. This is Brown Eyed Women on 88.7 The Pulse.
Take up the open plow the fields around. Gone are the days when the ladies said, please, Gentle Jack Jones, won't you come to me? Brown-eyed women and red grenadine. The bottle was dusty, but the liquor was clean. Sound of the thunder with the rain pouring down, and it looks like the old man's getting on. 1920 when he stepped to the bar, drank to the dregs of the whiskey jar. 1930 when the wall caved in, he paid his way selling red-eye gin. Sound of the thunder with the rain pouring down, and it looks like the old man's getting Delilah Jones was the mother of twins, 2 times over, and the rest was sins. Raised 8 boys, only I turned bad. Didn't get the ladies that the other ones had. Brown-eyed women and red grenadine. The bottle was dusty, but the liquor was clean. Sound of the thunder with the rain pouring down, and it looks like the old man's getting tumble down the shack in Bigfoot County. Snowed so hard that the roof caved in. Delilah Jones went to meet her God, and the old man never was the same again. Daddy made whiskey and he made it well. Cost $2, burned like hell. I cut hickory just to fire the still. Drink down a bottle and you're ready to kill. Brown-eyed women and red grenadine. The bottle was dusty, but the liquor was clean. Sound of the thunder with the rain pouring down, and it looks like the old man's getting on. Gone are the days when the ox fall down. You take up the yoke and plow the fields around. Gone are the days when the ladies said, please, Gentle Jack Jones, won't you come to me? Brown-eyed women and red grenadine. The bottle was dusty, but the liquor was clean. Sound of the thunder with the rain pouring down, and it looks like the old man's getting on. And it looks like the old man's getting on.
Welcome back to 88.7 The Pulse. Man, what a strong song that one is. I love that song. One more Saturday night. That's all I really want. Just one more Saturday night. Give me a little more time to party. Give me a little more time to enjoy myself and play some more music. That's all anybody could ask for, really. Yeah, that song's always been a soundtrack of my life because, I mean, what else could you want? One more Saturday night. That's always the best day of the week. That's all I'm trying to make it to. I'm trying to make it to Friday so that I can get myself ready for Saturday night, baby. Saturday night always holds something crazy. I can't think of a Saturday night in the past 4 years that I haven't done something wild. Ever since I started high school, Saturday night was the night that the boys go out and we do something crazy. We get ourselves into trouble. You listen to some good tunes, you have yourself a good night. That's always been the time for it, man. And so this song has always meant so much to me for that reason. So I love to hear that one. And coming up, we've got one of those classic Grateful Dead songs. This is one of the ones that, like, everybody knows this from the Dead. Everybody wants to hear it. It's Truckin', man. That one's been a soundtrack of a lot of people's lives. I don't know why. This one has always been the most popular. I've always loved this song, but I never thought it was number one. In my opinion, One More Saturday Night was always my favorite just because the meaning behind it. Who doesn't love Saturday nights? But Truckin', it's such an interesting target audience. How many truckers are listening to the Grateful Dead? You'd think it'd be more like, just like lazy hippies that aren't doing anything for work, not truckers. But I guess truckers love it, man. And this one seemed to hit. The world just loved this song. They never seem to turn this one down. This is what everybody wants to hear when they hear the Grateful Dead. And this version is crazy. They drag this one out for a while. 12 minutes, man. They just keep going with it. But, I love it. I never get sick of it. When the Grateful Dead just keeps going with these songs, it's like, that's what I want, man. This is what I want to hear from them. I just want the music to never stop. So what do you say? Let's get into it. A little bit of Truckin' on 88.7, The Pulse.
Went down to the mountain, I was drinking some wine. Looked up in the heaven, Lord, I saw a mighty sign. Written fire across the heaven, plain as black and white. Get prepared, it's gonna be a party tonight. Hey, Saturday night. Yeah.
Welcome back to 88.7 The Pulse. You're listening to The Pulse Album of the Week, and you're joined by Spike. We just heard a little bit of Trucking. You know, that's actually the first Grateful Dead song that I ever heard. I remember being to Canada. I believe I was 13 at the time, and this was a very transformative year for me. It was the summer of I would have been 14, because it was the summer of my freshman to sophomore year, and I decided to go to Canada to visit my uncle for the summer. And as I was up there, you know, the Canadians, from my experience, they seem to be much more free-spirited people. And the Grateful Dead is a free-spirited band. And so, you know, they just play the Grateful Dead all the time. And so I was hearing them, you know, left and right in the grocery store, from people just talking about them in the corner. And eventually I asked my uncle, I was like, so what's this with the Dead, man? And he tells me a little bit about it. You know, he told me he saw him a couple times in the 80s and stuff like that. He had the real true Dead experience, and he told me all about it, and I was just fascinated. So after he told me that, we made our way back to his little apartment. Is on the 11th story, and so I go up there, and I'm shuffling through his CDs, and I find a Grateful Dead album. It happened to be this, Live at Europe, 1972, and I ask him, which song do I need to listen to first? Because, you know, when you listen to an album, when you listen to a band for the first time, you better make sure that first song you hear is a good one, because if not, it'll turn you away forever. So he goes, Truckin'. And I was like, all right, I guess you'd know better than anybody. So I put the CD in, and I put Truckin' on, and wow, my life changed. You know, I've been a Deadhead ever since. I can't tell you how much they've impacted my life. I've seen the Grateful Dead movie 50 times now, at least. I can recite all the words. Let me say something for the people that understand this inside joke. Who's the man tuning the piano? Those who get it, get it, and those who don't. But, you know, I just love this song and this band, and I have ever since I heard this song, Truckin', about 4 years ago in Canada. You know, I'll never be able to live that down. That moment was one of the best moments of my life. Being able to discover that for the first time, and I'll never forget being in the airport heading home from Canada towards the end of the summer of my freshman year, and I was listening to the Grateful Dead on my phone, you know, had my headphones in and stuff. I just remember thinking, like, I've stumbled upon a gold mine. I've stumbled upon something so valuable that I'll never forget. You know, I've never forgotten it. And I've never forgotten that moment that I realized I found something I love more than just about anything in the world. This is the best music that there is, really. You know, this is what it's about. Listening to music like this and just loving life, man. So what do you say? Let me put you onto this next one. This is Truckin' on 88.7 The Pulse.
My keys out on Main Street. Chicago, New York, Detroit, and it's on the same street. Your typical city involved in a typical daydream. Hang it up and see what tomorrow brings. Dallas, got a soft machine. Houston, also New Orleans. New York, got the ways and means, but just won't let you leave. Oh. Most of the cats you meet in the street, they go to the. Most of the time they're sitting there crying at home. well, you know she isn't the same. Living on red tip, vitamin C, and cocaine. All the friends can say it ain't a shame. Up to Buffalo, I've been thinking that the mellow sun would take time. Pick a place to go, just keep chugging sitting and staring out the hotel window. Got a tip dog on and kick the door in again. I like to get some sleep before I travel, but if you got a warrant, I guess you're gonna come in. Busted down a Bourbon Street, set up like a bowling pin. Got a cloud gets the wearing thin, just won't let you be. No, no. Used to get hanging around the Nemac to travel. You're tired of traveling, you wanna settle down. Guess they can't revoke you both for trying. Get out of the tool and look all around. Sometimes the lights all shining on me. Other times I can barely see. Lately it occurs to me. A long train trip it's been. Turkey, never going home. Whoa, whoa, baby, back where I belong. Back home, sit down and patch my bones. Get back trucking. When I get back trucking home. When I get back trucking home. When I get back trucking home. 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 Woo!
now, get back trucking on. He now get back trucking on. He now get back trucking on. Get back trucking on. Get back trucking on. Get back trucking on.